Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 14th of February 2024. 14th of February. It's a special day, I think. Is love in the air. Coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0TC.
Hello.
And me, David G7URP. Lovely to see you on this Valentine's Day for the first time, I think, for NARC Live. On the show tonight, Carl, K9LA, with his update on our current propagation cycle 25. We have club news and pictures. And we find out what on earth this is. We only had a few entries for this. I think it's quite tough, but do you know what that is? And if you didn't have a chance to enter, then drop it onto BATC or Facebook and we'll read your answer out when we get to it as well. But first, back to club news. And Norwich Science Festival starts this Saturday for 8 days, Saturday to Saturday inclusive. It's a pretty unique event, actually, I think. There might be a couple of others in the country, but this is a whole week where the city has many, many activities. And events, and many talks and events indeed, are free or very low cost, sort of £6, that sort of thing. Now, we thought that as it's a scientific festival and it encourages people and organisations to show various scientific hobbies and interests, then we should put it on display. So Norfolk Amateur Radio Club are putting on a display in the forum on Monday from 10:30 to 1600, so 10:30 till 4 o'clock. They have a different theme every day, and this is the best one that suited our club, we felt. So that's more or less where we'll be. You see it there. Tammy, myself, along with Mark, Martin and Jim will be showing various aspects of wireless and radio and Morse and crystal sets to the very latest kit. You're hoping to build a radio while we're there?
Maybe,
well?
yep.
So that's what you hope to do anyway. No pressure, Tammy, for the 5.5 hours that you've got. So it should be very good fun. And of course, you're welcome to join us. That part of the festival is completely free, and it's in the forum, which is very central to Norwich. If you're not sure and you're out of the area, but you're going to come in for it, it's sort of used to be the library. The library is still there, but there's many other things there as well. It's very central, just off the marketplace in Norwich. So we hope to represent the hobby and our club there. Now, last week's meeting at CNS School, we were very pleased to welcome Lucy Webster. She was from Diabetes Norfolk, and that's one of the two charities which members, you, decided to support in 2023. Lucy told us more about her group's work and accepted this cheque for £450 from the club for our fundraising activities last year. Now, that's actually half the amount that was raised, because the other group we supported was Norwich Fab Club, and we showed the presentation of that cheque to you last time. So lovely to meet Lucy and find out more about Diabetes Norfolk at the school last week. That's quite a lot of money as well. These are relatively small charities, and as I said about Fab Club, and I think I'd say the same for Diabetes Norfolk, as Lucy said, these are large amounts which will make a big difference to relatively small and local charities. So that was lovely. And this, of course, is your cue to start thinking about what charity you would like to propose at this year's AGM at the beginning of April, because one of the charities that's proposed will be adopted, and that's voted for by the members with a hand vote on the day. So look forward to that. I think it's April the 3rd. I've put myself on the spot there, but I believe that Tammy will now check it. I think it's Wednesday, April the 3rd, which will be an in-person meeting, of course, annual general meeting. At last week's meeting at the school, we also held a tabletop sale, and for the first time in many, many years, an auction as well. Now, this was at the front of the room, and they were taking items in to sell an auction. We weren't sure how many people, but I think there was about 41 items in the end auction, weren't there? So this is a part of the tabletop sale area there. And there we are, there's an auction going on, and that was really popular. I said about 40 items, I think, were sold that way. Oh. So it was really good. Thanks to everybody who supported it, and special thanks to Mark G0TMT, whose idea or suggestion it was to do an auction, and backed with that, he kindly offered to be auctioneer as well. So that was good fun. Now to members news, and we've got an update as well. Just a quick, by the way, we know we talk about the card and Norfolk Amateur Radio Club. I can tell you about that now. This is the card that I'm always saying to you. Let us know if you'd like to send to anybody who would be cheered up by this card. You just have to drop the name and address to me on an email, and we'll send the card to them wherever they are in the world, literally. Two of our well-known members who've been members many years and do a lot of support for the club. That's Paul G3VPT and Bob G7JTZ. We know they're close friends anyway, but coincidentally, within days of each other, they were going for surgery last week, and we did send them each a card, and I'm delighted to say that both are doing well. They're both home, and they're doing well from their surgery. So Bob and Paul, a shout out to you to recover soon so that we can see your face again at Norfolk Amateur Radio Club, but glad that you enjoyed the card. Now on to other news, and Bob, G6PWS, he sent us these pictures. He says, my friend is with a local birdwatch group, and I joined him a couple of weekends ago to do National Bird Count, which was the National Bird Weekend, isn't it, Tammy?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Organised by the RSPB. His friend also took Bob to see a nest site in WGC, and some of the pictures that he took are there. They're stunning pictures, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely fantastic pictures.
There you go, it's the little babies.
Lovely.
Feeding time.
Yeah, that is wonderful, isn't it? Thank you very much
Really
for those
lovely.
wonderful pictures, Bob. Now, Neil G4JUV has sent us details of a group called 145 Alive. 145 being 2 metres. It's a group intended to try and make 2 metres more active, more lively. It promotes a regular net on a Saturday 2 till 4. And the group is also on Facebook, which is probably where you can find best about what's happening and when. So if you go onto Facebook and just search for 145 Alive, you'll find details. There's some photos which show interesting portable stations and antennas. And also there's this event, which Neil also sent us a few days after he sent me the original piece. And this is coming up Easter Saturday. It's not long because Easter's early this year, the end of March. And there's a couple of things there that are running. And it's organised by a local ham, I think Suffolk-based Andy 2E0DIQ. But it's a good group, and if you're like many and they feel there's not enough going on 2 metres, both on the repeaters and also simplex, these are the couple of things that this group is organising. So get on Facebook and have a look, and you'll find out more details, and you can join it there, and you can find out when things are happening. Thanks for sending us those details, Neil. Now, finally, on club members' news, from Martin G7UGB. He sends us details of an excellent reason to visit Orlando, Florida in February.
Really?
I can't think why anybody would want to go to Orlando in Florida, but there is a good reason, and he sent us this.
Sites that have, the simple little schematic on how to build it.
Now, Martin, when he talked about this to me earlier today as well, he said that this is a little bit like Barford on steroids, which I think describes it well. Look at the scale of it. I thought the only big real hamvention in America was at Dayton, but this is clearly up there with that. And there's other things to do in Orlando as well, I believe, Tammy, isn't there? Would you like to come to Orlando with me in Florida 1 February in particular? Look at this. Anyway, this video...
This is the transmitter and receiver out of the Pang Jin.
This video is available on YouTube.
It's about 6 minutes long.
It's about 6 minutes long. So we won't play it all there for you, but if you'd like to have a look at it, go to YouTube and search for this. It's called... what was it called? The Hamvention? No, I can't remember what it was called now. Sorry about that. I didn't note it down at the beginning when I sent you the video, Tammy.
We'll find it. Da, da, da.
We're going to find it quickly.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm sure you'll find it if you touch in Florida Hamvention in February. You'll find out details of what it's called. We're just going to play it back a little bit on our local machine here and see. Oh no, there's adverts.
It's called the Hamcation Radio Festival in February 24.
So look for
Orlando.
Hamcation. And if you want to go to Florida or Orlando for any other reason, then February would be a pretty good time to do it, I think, looking at that. Thanks very much for sending us that, Martin.
Quiet season.
Yeah. Okay, Tammy, over to you for your little people.
Hang on, I've got rid of it.
Sorry
now.
about that.
That's right. Right, here we go. Things have been happening in the studio again, you know?
Really?
Buttons have been pressed, and I found out why.
Is that our mixer?
It's horse racing.
It's very good. Riding the faders.
Yep.
Miniature-calendar.com. A new picture every day, and Tammy picks one for us every week. Now, actually, Tammy, this is one of those moments. We don't do many of these now when you don't know about something. Because I think, why do you have exclusivity on Little People every week? And I think today is a special day, you know, for many men.
Right.
Why are you looking over there?
I don't know. What are you doing?
Well, I just thought I'm going to join in this week with Little People because I made a little something for you. Oh no, he's fallen over. And I'm going to share this with you. A little something I made for you for Valentine's. My own version of
Have
Little
you
People.
been going through my little people?
No. It's a sport especially for you.
Oh, thanks. We met through amateur radio, really?
Shall I show it close up on there? I'm sure you'd love me to. I'll be in trouble for this later. Do you want to have a look at this? This is a little person. You can see by the size of my fingers. And there we are. I thought you'd love this, Tammy.
Thanks.
Happy Valentine's.
Very
Should we do an on-screen kiss or not?
No, definitely not.
Told you I'll be in trouble. Put it on the right picture.
Put it on there. Oh, dear.
I'm in trouble. Believe me. Anyway, thank you very much for that, Tammy. But actually, you shouldn't just say, you did give me something.
Oh.
I knew this would investigate that. What did you give me laying in bed this morning when we woke up on Valentine's Day? Come on.
Well.
Keep it clean.
I gave you this.
You did. And you made this.
I did. There you go.
So there we are. There we go. I'll show you this now. Tammy made this. It was inside the card she gave me first thing this morning. And she made that from little surface mount LEDs and a bit of copper clad board, and it's powered by a little battery on the back. And you did that all yourself. It's nothing to do with me, and that was a complete surprise.
I've been stealing stuff.
Don't call me geeky. Right, that's all I'm saying. If love is in the air for you, if you, not just a person, but if you've got a rig that you love, you know, whether it's a 7300 or an FT1000 or whatever it is, you can always put it onto Facebook or BATC and we'll mention it there. All right? Okay. So what have you been doing? Do keep in touch. We'll be back here in 2 weeks' time. Send us your news and your pictures and your videos, and as you can see, we love to show them. radio@dcpmicro.com. We'd love to see your pictures and hear your news and everything, and we'd love to share it with everybody else as well. So now let's get round to that competition, which we set 3 weeks ago now, because we had 2 weeks meetings at CNS school. And we asked you last time, what on earth is this? Now, as we know, these things don't have to be radio related, but they might be. Okay. So what do we have? First up, Bruce G4KZT says, I think this week's object is a tool used by farriers. I believe it's called a hoof tester. It looks like something from a torture chamber, though, he says.
It does a little bit. It looks a bit mean on the end there, doesn't it?
It certainly doesn't look like that. Anyway, what have you got?
David M6DPZ, is this week's photo a welder's clamp?
That's a bit more like it, isn't it? And Bob G6PWS says, my version of what on earth is this? It's for farrier and horses. As a qualified blacksmith welder in my youth, in brackets he said it took me 3 years of college work and 6 weeks to get fed up with. But we also learned a lot about what tools were needed. This is a hoof tester, which is used to locate and diagnose disease, bruised or laminitis areas of a horse's foot, and then ready for any repairs. Now, have we got anybody on Facebook or on BATC who has guessed out what that was? So it was a tough one. Let's have a look and see. What on earth was that?
It was a horse hoof tester.
Now, this is great. And thank you very much, by the way, to Mihai at 2E0IBR, who gave us that picture and sent this in. The only thing is that this solution picture, as we call it, I'm not sure what that bit means. Do you? I don't know what that means in relation to a horse's hoof tester.
Well, that is the tester.
But what's the round ring for?
He's testing it.
Okay.
Like you would test a hoof.
Oh, I suppose so, yeah. Okay. I just wasn't sure. I've never seen that before. Anyway, well done to you, 3 of you who entered, because I thought that was a really difficult one. But there's always clever people in our club who watch this and tell us who it is. Let's see if you're as clever this week when we ask you, what on earth is this? Do you know what that is? Send your answers to radio@dcpmicro.com. Do it within the next 2 weeks, before Wednesday afternoon about 3 o'clock, and we will reveal all. I had no idea what this was when it would be sent to me, if that's any help or not. Maybe you know. So, as always, I ask as well for more objects. We have got quite a few that have been sent to us, but we're eating through those now. So if you've got a mystery object that you think will be ideal for What on Earth, then please send it to us. Everything for the club, send to radio@dcpmicro.com. There we are, the address is at the bottom of your screen now. Now, before we meet our guest this evening, let's just time to tell you what's happening in the club this coming week. So at 7 o'clock on Sunday, the GB2RS News on GB3NB. On Monday at 7:30, the Monday Night Net on GB3NB as well, and at 8 o'clock, the 80-metre CW Net on 3.543 megahertz. And then next Wednesday, which is February the 21st, we meet at CNS School between 7 and 9:30 for a social informal, and also Bright Sparks for our younger members, where they're going to make a sound-operated lighting effect. I thought we'd tell you what we're going to. So if any of you Bright Sparks are watching this, Tammy and I are going to be there because Simon's on holiday next week, and we're going to teach you
Frankie
how
is
to make
watching,
one of those. Oh, Frankie's
actually.
watching.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, well, hello to you, Frankie. And there's several others as well. I think there's 7 in the group now, which is very good. So we hope to see you then. And of course, don't forget this, I mentioned it earlier, this card, which really does cheer people up. We're happy to send one of these to anybody that you would like us to, a card from your club. Just, again, send their name and address. We'll add your name to ours, and we will post them a card. Now we're on to our main event. I hope our guest is there, because all I can see is a blank screen at the moment with his name on it. But Carl, if you're there, we've seen you several times before. Always pictures arrive just in time. That's brilliant. And lovely to welcome you back to NARC. This is Carl, K9LA. Hello, Carl.
How you doing, David, Tammy?
Good to see you. Good to see you, Carl. You had me worried for a moment, though, because all we saw was a blank screen.
Nope, I was sitting there.
Oh, good. Well, for several years now, you've been bringing us an update, a unique update on propagation cycle 25. And tonight you're going to tell us where we are, I guess, on the cycle and what we should expect from the hobby this year. So we look forward to it. As always, if you're watching this now on Wednesday and you're watching it live, then please send us any questions or comments for Carl on Facebook or BATC, and we'll be happy to read him to Carl at the end. Over to you, Carl.
Okay, thank you, David, Tammy. Again, let me thank you for inviting me. This is my 8th time. I started in 2017. And yeah, it's a lot of things have happened over 8 years, and with respect to just about everything in ham radio. But as you can see by the title, I'll give a quick update on cycle 25, talk about 6-meter antennas, and also talk about some general comments on 160 meters. So let's get on to the agenda. It's kind of what I just said. How's cycle 25 doing? Do you really need a 6-meter antenna for operating on 6 meters? And note that I've spelled meters correctly too. So, and then some comments on 160. Basically, why isn't it better than it is? So let's get into it. Here's the first part is cycle 25. And there's really a good picture of what cycle 25 is doing. That the thick red line is the progress of cycle 25. Also on that chart, on that plot, are 4 other solar cycles. The green one is cycle 24, the last solar cycle. And as you can see, it was a small cycle. The next one is the orange curve. That's cycle 23, which peaked around 2000, 2001. It had 2 peaks. And if you average all the previous 24 cycles, cycle 23, it was pretty much an average cycle. The blue one is cycle 21, which peaked in 1979. And it was moderately big, as you can see. Then, of course, cycle 19, the largest in recorded history. That's purple. And it was a big one, of course. And there's lots of comments on people who operated back then, especially on 10 meters and 6 meters, although 6 meters wasn't as readily available as it is nowadays. Now, the red curve, which is cycle 25, has 44 months of smooth sunspot number data since solar minimum, which occurred in December 2019. So we're about 4 years into cycle 25. As you can see, we've exceeded cycle 24, so that's the good news. And I can say that so far, February has been a good month for sunspots. So hopefully that red curve will take a little uptick. There's always the possibility that cycle 25 can make it up to an average cycle, but I kind of doubt if it'll get bigger than that. Maybe it'll end up in between the small green cycle and the average orange cycle. But all we can do is just wait and see what happens. Cycle 25 going to have 1 peak or 2 peaks? Well, here's a plot of cycle 24 and also cycle 25. Cycle 24, you can see the green dotted curve. That's the sum of both the sunspots in the northern hemisphere, the northern solar hemisphere, and the southern solar hemisphere. You can see cycle 25 had a very definite second peak that really helped 6 meter propagation via the F2 region. And if you look at the sunspots in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, you can see why it had a double peak. Early on, the northern solar hemisphere was very active with sunspots, whereas the southern solar hemisphere wasn't. And then about 5 years into it, things flipped. The southern hemisphere was very active and the northern hemisphere was kind of quiet. And that gave us the 2 peaks. So far for cycle 25, both hemispheres have been kind of working together. So it doesn't look like we're going to have 2 peaks for cycle 25, but we still got a way to go. So all we can do is wait to see what happens. Now it's mid-February and here comes summer. It'll be here in a couple months. And what that means is there's going to be lower maximum usable frequencies in the northern hemisphere here on Earth. And there's a plot of a path from K9LA to Germany at 1500 UTC. And what it does is plots the MUF for that path at 3 different solar cycle levels. The blue is a small solar cycle. The orange is kind of an average cycle, and the gray is a moderately big cycle. Now, what you can see is the MUF in the northern hemisphere on that path decreases during the summer months, and it's best basically towards the end of the year in October, November, December, and January, February aren't bad either. What causes this? Well, it's caused by a change in the composition of the atmosphere. In the summer months, there is a decreased ratio of oxygen atoms versus molecular nitrogen. Now, oxygen atoms are good for electron production, whereas molecular nitrogen is good for recombination. So when we hit the winter, the ratio of the atomic oxygen to molecular nitrogen is much higher than in the summer. And that means there's more electrons, which means there's going to be a higher MUF. Now, this also flips in the southern hemisphere, like in Australia or New Zealand or deep South America. In June, which is their winter, that's when their MUFs are highest. And in the December, November, December months, that's their summer. So their MUF is lower down there. So the two hemispheres of Earth are kind of out of phase. So what about propagation on the bands? What's going to happen here? Well, the higher bands, 15, 12, and 10, should be excellent for worldwide F2 propagation. If you're on the air, you'll probably notice that already. It's going to keep going for the remainder of February and into March and April, and then the MUFs will decrease during the summer months. And of course, they'll be back next fall and winter, starting September, October, November, for sure. I still think we'll have more F2 propagation on 6 meters. We had it around the maximum of cycle 24 in the fall and winter. And remember, cycle 25 is a bit bigger than 24 right now, and it may get even a bit higher. There won't be much. It's not like we have a really big cycle, but there should be enough if you're in the right place at the right time. The lower bands, 160, 75 and 80, 60 and 40, should be okay to decent at night. Now, I say okay, that kind of applies to 160 and 80, decent, 60 and 40. So all we can do is get on the air and see what happens. Now, I highly recommend you take advantage of the peak here in cycle 25. Of course, it'll probably go through the end of cycle 20, the end of 2024, and then probably do its slow decline. So take advantage. Get on 15, 12, and 10. That's because we may be in our third period of small solar cycles. Here's a plot of the maximum smooth sunspot number for all 24 solar cycles. You can see we've had 3 periods of big solar cycles. For example, cycles 1, 2, 3, 4. That was a period of big cycles. Cycles 8 through 11 were quite big, and cycles 15 through 23 were kind of big. But you can also see there were some periods of small solar cycles. Cycle 5, 6, and 7. Cycle 6 is the smallest in recorded history. Cycle 24, the one we went through prior to 25, it was the 4th smallest in recorded history and the smallest in our lifetimes, of course. So we just may be in that third period of small solar cycles, which also suggests that cycle 26 may be a small one too. I hope to be around for cycle 26. We'll find out. I'll let you know, that's for sure. So what about antennas for 6 meters? Hopefully you recognize that Heathkit 6er, or they called it a lunchbox. It was just a little AM transmitter with a regenerative receiver, but it got lots of people on 6 meters in the 60s and 70s before our rigs had 6 meters on them. And it just shows a piece of RG58 coax running to probably a dipole. But my early days on 6 meters, well, during the summer months, when sporadic E was quite common, I participated in the ARRL VHF contests, and I enjoyed that. That was mostly June, some September. But I didn't have a 6 meter antenna, so what did I use? Well, I used my 40 meter inverted V, its apex is at about 15 meters, about 45 feet. I also use my Tenadyne 6-element log periodic dipole array. That's a 14 to 30 megahertz log periodic array. Of course, it works great on 20 through 10 meters, and it also worked pretty good on 6 meters. It was at about 20 meters, about 60 feet, so a little bit less than 20 meters. Yeah, a little bit less than 20. But they worked. I worked a lot of people during the summer months. I didn't get on too much during the fall and winter. I should have, but oh well. I was busy probably playing around on 10 and 15. So here's what a 40-meter inverted V looks like on 6 meters. On the left is the elevation pattern. You can see it produces some good low elevation angle gain. ForNet2, the modeling program I used, says about 7.5 dBi gain. That's not bad at all. Remember, a dipole at the same height would be about, probably about a little bit less than 7 dBi. So it's got a little bit of gain. On the right is the azimuth pattern. Note that the X direction is broadside to the inverted V, so it's really, the pattern is off onto the wire side. So you just got to know that. Of course, you probably won't be rotating your inverted V, so it doesn't matter. You'll just work what you hear. Now, the SWR at the antenna is about 7 to 1, but lossy coax always helps the SWR. I had about 100 feet of RG8 coax, and in the shack, the SWR was about 4 to 1. So my tuner in my rig had no problem with this, and I had a lot of fun with the inverted V on 6. Now, at times I used the T6 also, like I said. If the 40-meter signal wasn't too good, I'd use the T6. Here's what the 40-meter or the T6 looks like on 6 meters. There's a picture of the T6 there on the right. It's only about a 4-meter boom length, so it's kind of small, but it's very effective on 20 meters through 10 meters, and even on 6 meters. Again, the vertical plane has nice low-angle radiation. Note that the gain is a little bit higher, about another dB, so that helps. Max gain's about 8.6 dBi. There's the pattern on the right there, the horizontal. You're looking down on the antenna, and at least its maximum is at least in the direction the antenna is pointing. The front to back isn't that good, but that's okay. Interestingly, the SWR in the shack on 6 meters was less than 2 to 1, so the coax run to that helped, and the antenna itself was pretty good to start with, which that was a plus. What are my future plans for 6 meters? Well, I'm thinking about adding a parasitic element to the T6 to improve the pattern on 6. I've done some preliminary modeling, and it shows that would be a nice improvement. The front to back would increase quite a bit. I also have 3 3-element 6-meter Yagis right now. I've managed to pick them up over the years. So what should I do with these? That's what I'm thinking about. Should I mount one northeast, mount one pointing southeast, one to the southwest, and use the T6 to the northwest? Therefore, I could just use a 4-position coax switch, and I can switch between 4 directions instantaneously. It sounds kind of attractive to me. Or should I just stack all 3 on one tower and rotate them? You know, they're not, the 3-element 6 is not very big, that's for sure. So it would not be a big strain on a tower with 3 of those. Or I could just disassemble all 3 and make a 9-element Yagi if I wanted to. Lots of good things, and hopefully maybe I'll do something as the weather gets warmer here. I thought I'd throw this in. kind of put together all the propagation modes on 6 meters from those that don't depend on the atmosphere or the ionosphere to ones that are extraterrestrial. So there's a lot of modes on 6 meters that you can have fun with. And of course, Jim, K9LA, is working to try to better understand sporadic E. So have some fun on 6 meters. I'm sure most of your rigs cover it. Got a cat here, just a minute. Oops, hit the keyboard here. Hold on. See where I am. Nope. Come on. There we go. Now let's get into 160 meters. And that image just says that, noise is a big factor on top band. There's no doubt about it. You're going to have to fight noise problems to be effective on 160, at least if it's more than just local contacts. We're around the solar maximum of cycle 25. And the consensus among tom banders is that 160 meters is just not as good as it should be. For example, during the peak of cycle 23 in 2000 to 2001, W8JI worked over 200 countries and all 40 zones on 160. And that was for cycle 23, which was a little bit bigger than cycle 25. So something's going on. And I just put down some things here that interesting to think about. Are there just too many solar flares and coronal mass ejections that screw up the ionosphere? Or is there something else going on that we just don't fully understand yet? For example, global warming. The more CO2 that's put into the atmosphere, that generates more electrons in the lower ionosphere. Well, that's not good for ionospheric absorption, down in the D region. So is that a problem? I've seen a paper that kind of suggests that, but it really isn't done for ham radio. So it'd be interesting to look at that more. There's something else that I just became aware of, satellite ablation. We've got a lot of stuff circling the Earth. And when a satellite ablates, which means it disintegrates into very small particles as it plunges to Earth, there's going to be a lot more particles in the lower ionosphere, and that's not good either. Maybe it's affecting absorption, which is very critical on 160. An increased man-made noise. Well, I'm sure everybody's aware of that. It's more and more electronics. We just get more and more noise. So here's a picture of satellite ablation. That image on the right shows all the stuff you can see in low Earth orbit around Earth. There's a whole pile of stuff. It's amazing the number of satellites we have up there. We've got all the GPS constellations and internet constellations and all that stuff. But there's also stuff in geosynchronous orbit. Now, I'm not sure if that image accurately shows how many satellites we have in geosynchronous orbit. I kind of didn't think we had that many, but maybe we do. Now, satellites are bigger than meteors. They're heavier and they're slower too. So when they ablate, the satellites put stuff into the atmosphere from 40 to 70 kilometers. Well, that's in the lower ionosphere, down to about 60 kilometers. And that's where absorption occurs. Meteors, on the other hand, ablate between 75 and 110 kilometers. So they're up higher. And I don't know how much satellite particles there are compared to meteor particles. Something maybe that would be interesting to look at. And of course, the increase in man-made noise. There's a plot of man-made noise in a CW bandwidth, 500 hertz. Comes from the old ITU document, radio noise. And it shows the noise level in that 500 hertz bandwidth for various environments. Red is in industrial, if you're in an industrial area. Blue is residential. Orange is rural, and green is quiet rural. Also, the dashed line at the bottom, purple line, that's the typical receiver minimum discernible signal. In other words, its sensitivity. You can see that in general, our stations can't hear down to the sensitivity of the radio. It's masked by noise. So, for example, on 160 meters, that'd be just below 2 megahertz. If you live in a residential area, that's about a S7 or S8 noise level. Of course, as you go higher in frequency, the noise drops. So if you're up on 10 meters, it's only about an S1 or so. So just be aware of that. Now, there's some recent data from the Netherlands. And you can see there's the citation for their paper. It was in April 2019. They looked at noise in residential areas and in rural areas around Netherlands. And they tried to use, they used the same methodology as the ITU data. And what they saw was they claimed that in a residential area, the noise has increased by about 9 dB on 160. Wow. By about 4 dB on 20 and about 2 dB on 10. Now, if you're in a rural area, there's still some noise increase, but it's not as bad. And of course, 9 dB on 160, if you're in a residential area, that really could cause problems. And you'd have to really dig down to find out what's going on. A lot of it might be even in your house, not just power line noise or whatever else. Pretty interesting stuff. I thought I'd make a comment about 80 meters because the consensus that 160 isn't as good as it should be kind of applies to 80 meters also. And I have a selfish interest here in 80 meters because I need 4 zones on 80 for 5-band worked all zones. And I'd sure like to finish that on CW, but with the higher noise levels, maybe that's just not going to happen. I may have to go to FT8 because of its advantage over CW. FT8 can hear farther down into the noise. And there also seems to be a lack of activity on CW, except during, the big contests like CQRY DX CW. So we'll have to see where I end up. I know some people have kind of worked their last zones using FT8 because that's the most effective way to do it. So, summary, cycle 25 is big enough to allow great 15, 12, and 10 meter propagation. Take advantage of it. Solar maximum is likely going to be in late 2024. And it's fun to play with antennas, that's for sure, especially with small ones like for 6 meters. And I hope to have a lot of fun this summer, or at least in the spring when the weather gets better. If you're on 160, all I can say is keep your butt in the chair. So you can catch the times when 160 meter just gives you the opportunity. So David, Tammy, that's all I had. If there are any questions, I'd certainly try to entertain them.
Many thanks, Carl.
Okay.
A good update on our hobby, and I think the message again, I think you brought us last time, is use the bands while we can.
Use the bands, that's right.
Yeah, make the most of them. Whilst digital modes seem to get through most things, we can use most of the modes at the moment. Is that fair?
Yep, that's fair. Yep.
Okay, we have got a couple of comments. Well, firstly, the main one from Steve, G0KYA. He says, and I'm sure you know Steve as well.
I know Steve. Yes. Hi,
Jim
Steve.
A lot on propagation. As of July 2023, the website UCS Satellite Database lists 6,718 known satellites.
Wow.
Of these, though, 580 are listed in the database as being at GEO.
Wow. I didn't realize there were that many up there, but I guess there are at geosynchronous altitudes. Wow.
Yeah, it is something. And I mean, this research is, I know that Steve is the chair of the Propagation Studies Committee for the RSGB, as you know.
Yes.
And it spends a lot of time working on it. But, you know, this although we seem to have better computers now to predict and model and everything, there's still so much to learn, isn't there?
Yeah. What I wonder is why don't more satellites run into each other?
Yeah. Especially when you see these Starlink ones going up.
Or when we launch go to the International Space Station, you know, how come they don't hit anybody and hit any of the other ones? I don't know. Maybe I just don't understand it, I guess.
Well, no, Tammy and I went to an astronomy talk, didn't we? A local from the Breckland Astronomy Association a year or so ago, I guess. And, you know, they said there are real concerns about that now. As I said, lots of these Starlink ones going up in huge quantities as well. So
yeah, all those low Earth orbit satellites may give us another layer in the ionosphere.
Yeah,
you know, all their all the metal up there. Good grief.
I mentioned earlier on, you may have heard it when I mentioned Bright Sparks. We have some youngsters in our club who do various projects and everything. And one of our young hams is Frankie, M7EQR. And he's asked a question: how does CO2 affect the ionosphere for HF, good or bad?
From what I've seen, it could be a bad influence on the ionosphere. Like I said earlier, that the more CO2 that gets into the atmosphere, it generates more electrons down in the lower ionosphere, which is not good for absorption. That's just a preliminary statement. I can't put my finger on how much, you know, does it increase absorption, 1 dB, 2 dB, 3 dB? I don't know. But there's just a possibility that it could be detrimental to our ham radio operations, especially on the lower bands.
And I guess we can wrap that up with other things like the whole question of climate change and everything which we're all experiencing now.
Yep.
We don't want to realise too late, do we? And look back and say, oh, it affected that. But anyway, good question, Frankie. Thank you for that. Steve, by the way, Steve G0KY came back and after your comment on what he said, and he said, give it time. So, yeah, that's what we've got to do. When you talk about small, by the way, just everybody at home now, if you have got any questions or comments for Carl, we'll be wrapping up shortly, so please enter them now. A question from me, really. When you talk about small cycles, possibly in the future, do you mean in duration or do you mean in quality as far as ham radio is concerned?
Okay, repeat the question, David.
Sorry, when you talked about small cycles, you talked about over the many, many years, different cycles, some of them smaller than others. But I'm just asking in terms of that graph and what we might be expecting for 26 or whatever. When you say small cycles, do you mean small in terms of the duration of the cycle or in the quality of them in terms of ham radio?
Small in terms of propagation. You know, the bigger the solar cycle, the more ionization there is, which helps 15, 12, and 10 meters, and even 6 meters. So when we have a small cycle, there's not as much ionization, so that really does shorten the duration for which you'll have F2 region propagation. You know, it won't, you know, like cycle 19, I believe, probably had 4 or 5 years of great F2 propagation on 10 meters. A small solar cycle, like 24, it probably had 2 years, maybe 3. So
we're just showing your slide back again there of what you looked at earlier on, what you showed us earlier.
Yeah, I don't have a, shoot, I should have had a picture of a solar cycle, but if you, visually look at a solar cycle, it starts down way low, comes up, and then goes back down. And of course, if it's a small cycle, it's not at the ionization level for as long of time as if it was a big cycle. So, and the number of sunspots is directly correlated with how much ionization there is. The more sunspots, the more ionization. Well, the more sunspots really means there's more extreme ultraviolet. And sunspots are just a proxy for extreme ultraviolet radiation from the sun.
Well, there's obviously more to understand, more to learn, and we're grateful to you for all your work on there, and of course Steve and his team as well. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Before we go, though, can I just ask a question? Because we've had a couple of comments about the hamcation, which was mentioned earlier in Orlando. I'll just tell you what the comments were first, and then I'm going to ask you if you've been to it. Because Martin G7UGB says, what about a club outing to Orlando? Can't think why. And then also Daniel M7GDR says, with a shared container to bring all our purchases back. Shared? Daniel, shared? Anyway, Carl, have you been to this hamcation?
I've been there once. No, I've been there twice. That's right. Living up at 40 degrees north latitude, it's a great place to go in February.
Yes.
I can sure say that.
And it would be a great place for us weather-wise, wouldn't it, if we were to go?
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
It's at least when I was there for the 2 times, it wasn't as big as Dayton, but it's not too far behind.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. They've got a big area where they're fairgrounds and 3 or 4 buildings, big buildings just full of ham radio stuff. And it's a good one to go to, no doubt.
It certainly sounds like it could be on the scale, if not of Dayton, of say Friedrichshafen, which is in Germany. It's one of our biggest European rallies.
I've been there a couple of times too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds like a good excuse. My wife is making the right noises next to me. So, anyway, Carl, thank you ever so much for joining us again on NARC Live, giving us an update on propagation, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Carl.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye. There we are. And that almost wraps it up for this week on NARC Live. Thank you very much for joining us. Just to remind you what's coming up this week. On Sunday, we've got the GB2RS News at 7 o'clock on GB3NB repeater. On Monday, there's 7:30, the Monday Night Net, also on the same repeater. And at 8 o'clock, the 80-metre CW net on 3.543 megahertz. And the next Wednesday, February the 21st, we're meeting at CNS again for a social informal and also Bright Sparks for our younger members. So they're going to be making that sound-operated lightning effect, and we can't wait for them to build it and show them how it works. We're going to bring an oscilloscope as well and see if we can show them what sort of waveform looks like coming out the microphone on the PCB. I think I'm looking forward to it more than they are. Anyway, until then, please do keep sending us your stories and mystery objects if you've got one. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time for NARC Live. But until then, from Tammy M0TC.
Bye-bye.
And from me, with love in the air, from David G7URP, take care, look after yourselves. Bye-bye.